Okay. Hello and welcome to the CIDDL Research and Practice Brief Series. The purpose of this series is to have conversations around the innovative use of technology in special education, early childhood, related services, leadership personnel preparation programs. Today, we have Dr. Richard Carter as our guest expert to share with us his research and practice about micro credentials. Welcome, Dr. Carter.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Dr. Carter, first, I want you to tell us a little bit about your research and practice and how it's applied in your teacher preparation programs.
Great. Well, just as soon as I got to the University of Wyoming, I was tasked with creating the pilot system for my own research partner. We're tasked with creating the initial micro-credential pilot for the state of Wyoming. Uh, Pretty much brand new to me, fascinating world because of all that it offers. And pretty much what we did was kind of started looking at the initial pieces, which were things like quality, what they're going to be, how they are going to be award, what credit are they awarded, and then how they are being distributed, what's the ecosystem that's being built around them, and just really see it as an opportunity, but then also see it as an opportunity with a lot of questions. That's kind of where the research came in. And ultimately, what we started doing was looking at what is quality of a micro credential. Like, how can we determine things like what is covered? How could we determine things like what, how much are they going to be awarded credit by, by state entities or by universities, et cetera. So that's really where we started. Now that is at the most basic foundational level of where we are with this. But again, it's something. It's an area that's evolving every day, and it's certainly exciting to be a part of it.
That is exciting. Thank you. Are there any specific issues that you're trying to address with this? I hear you saying that you're starting with a purpose. First, we have to figure out the purpose.
Great.
We're starting small, and then we have to determine what exactly goes into the micro credential, evaluating the quality, the fidelity of that, and then also evaluating how it's going to be graded or how badges
Mhm.
are going to be awarded. Correct?
Right.
Yes.
Right. Absolutely. And I think anyone that is interested in micro credentials right now, your first step is to go look at them, because it is, in a lot of ways, it's a it's a bit of a departure from the way that historically we've offered, from traditional professional development, and then in my case, using them in class, how we grade students, how it allows them to go explore. It's in some ways the beauty of it is personalization. You get to kind of go your own route, with some structure, but then that's also the challenge in that, one, how are we sure that the micro credentials that are offered are giving that quality experience? Two, who's going to do the assessing? Is it going to be you, the professor? Is it going to be the third party, which you will see most often in the way micro credentials are set up? And then how do students retain that? How do they know that they retain and are able to share their mastery, through badging, et cetera, which you brought up? There's a lot of moving parts in micro credentials, and it's not that you understand one aspect. There are multiple things to understand. Now the beauty of that is that they are all connected. Your micro credential is connected to your badge is connected to your repository of badges. It's just those steps to move through and to be aware of how they kind of stack on each other.
Right, exactly. I love the idea of the tech-enabled personalization of
Mhm.
micro credentials. I
Yeah.
think that that's very innovative. I think that it's going to take us in a whole different direction. You know as well as I know, when it comes down to professional development, oftentimes it's not only costly, but
Mhm.
people don't retain that information or
Right.
carry it on to wherever they're going. So
Right.
this whole idea of stacking these micro credentials for a bigger picture of whatever the concept may be that we're trying to teach and students are trying to learn is brilliant, right?
Yeah, certainly.
Um, yeah.
And I will just say quick, I know we want to keep these to, that 8 to 10, but I think this is important. With personalization, what I found is that, uh, offering that initial go find it, go chase your own path is great. You still need structure. I mean, we still need to guide our students through this process because it is a bit of a disruption for them to where historically how they have feel like they've been successful in classes. Saying, okay, now it's your turn. Still be with there, still guide them through the process, and you will get that reward that you're looking for.
That is an excellent point, because we always think about student-centered learning and what does it mean? And if we're just pushing them through what
Mhm.
has to be done without any choice, we can't really claim that we are offering student-centered learning,
Right.
right?
Right.
So the process, I can only imagine how difficult the process is in looking at all of our state standards, wherever it is that we may be,
Mhm.
and figuring out how we can layer these things to address the standards while offering that choice. And
Right.
yes, that guidance has to be there because, after all, students are students, right?
Right.
We need some guidance.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's gonna be for us as well. That's for any of us. And the guidance doesn't necessarily have to come from an individual, but some structure that still gives us a path through, I think is crucial.
Absolutely. Another question, what opportunities do you think micro-credentials may have for improving special education, related services, personnel preparation, leadership personnel preparation? Do you think the opportunities are limitless? What do you think?
Yeah, I'll go with limitless. That sounds great because I think especially when it comes to, as being a special education teacher for years, the PD that I went to was definitely that sit and get, and it was whole school type, school-wide initiatives that maybe yes I was a part of, but really didn't speak to the needs of my practice. So here now is that opportunity as this ecosystem of micro credentials is being built out, and we have quality micro credentials that speak to multiple areas. Yeah, I do. The I in IEP is individualized, right? So my students are unique. Their needs are unique. Well, here I don't need to wait for a specialist to come in as much. I don't need for that. I don't need for PD. I don't need approval for a new something to come in. I can go and explore at a very, at a time efficient, I will say, because it allows me to do it whenever I can. I can explore these my needs in ways that I just haven't had the opportunity to before. I can do as many as I want. I can do as few as I'm required, or I can do none. So I think it also offers that ability for you to go and really invest in learning more and more about how to serve each one of your students over time, which is again something we just have not had access to for many before.
Absolutely. I love how you mentioned personalization again,
Mhm.
and also the fact that when we look at micro credentials, getting badges, stacking them on top of each other, when we look at that personalization, think of all the time within education that we have spent Googling or trying to find things for a certain child, because like you
Mhm.
said, all children are unique. And
Right.
we spend all this time trying to find resources of our own. I really feel like these micro credentials are going to offer easier access, like you talked about, to be able to find things.
Right.
Not only that, now we can get credit for the work that we're doing in learning about something specific for a specific child or a specific group of children, which is excellent.
Certainly.
One more question. What resources or tools would you provide for those who want to learn more about your work? Is there a direction we can point them in?
Well, and for micro credentialing, I would suggest starting with the platforms. I mean, that's really where you need to begin to one see how these are structured, two how you might utilize them in your practice, because it really does. I mean, with micro credentials you have a number of organizations, a number of individuals that are creating them that may or may not you know have you know have a great the best understanding of how to provide instruction. I'm trying to say this in a very kind way because again, it's something that's new, it's something that's novel. We're all growing each time, so you will see some poor quality micro credentials, and then you'll see some that just blow your mind, amazing. And that's for you really to understand what you would say. Yes, I would offer this, or no, I would not offer this. They also give you an opportunity to learn how others in in education are, or giving opportunities for individuals to show mastery of their learning. And then it also shows kind of a different architecture into how we provide the resources, literature, etc., to guide students to understanding. So I would start there. I would also start with ideas of badging. So I would go to Badger, BADGR, and I would look at, okay, this is one part. This is my backpack or my kind of repository of badges that I've earned. What does that look like? Okay, what is access to learningdesign.org, which is a platform that offers micro credentials and also is closely related to the CIDDL Center. How does this work? What does it look like? What are the resources that I can access here? I can start my account, look around, see what's available. Another one would be Digital Promise, which offers quite a bit of micro credentials, and then as well, NEA has a large bank of micro credentials. There are others as well. I'm just kind of those are three big ones. So really familiarize yourself with that. This is definitely an area where the research is behind the practice. Has been often moving for a few years. Research is catching up. It will take some time, as it often does. However, in that time, our key areas are going to be that we're all looking out for is granularity. A micro credential, how small do we get a micro credential to call it a micro credential and not a full-on module? Like what is that, perfect amount that that a teacher or a student could learn in one sitting? The second is going to be ideas of of quality, which we've talked about extensively here. The others are going to be what they're worth. So if you're equating a micro credential to professional development, for instance, what is one sit and get 8 hour type event worth for PD versus what is one micro credential? In the state of Wyoming, what we've done is negotiated with our PTSB that one micro credential equals zero point 0.5 credits. You need 2 credits a year to maintain, or you need 1 credit a year to maintain your licensure. So the way it works is that you would do your PD, and then if you wanted to do micro credentials, you did 2, you're well on your way. That's going to shake up over time as well as we kind of as we all kind of coalesce around what this means.
Right, right. Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Dr.
Mhm.
Carter, for sharing your research and practice about micro-credentials. We really appreciate your time and work. For more information about CIDDL research and practice briefs and other resources for higher education and related services, please go to CIDDL.org. Don't forget to follow us on social media, subscribe to our channel, and leave us a message. Thank you all for joining us today.